Hello, hello. So this is about a 5-minute warning, but we are going to check audio to the stream in a second here. And so Scott, if you can hit unmute on the input 5, that is the frame one, so I can hear the frame people in here. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, hello. How you doing?
All right, I can hear you in the room. That's a good sign. Tom is going to be checking go live with the stream real quick and see if we have audio to the stream.
And can we get a sound check from Peter and Dee?
Check, check.
All right. You just want to say hello?
Hello, everyone.
Fantastic. And Peter?
Other Peter.
I believe you're muted.
There you go. Rookie mistake.
Excellent.
All right.
I want to make sure you guys, when your microphone's on, also please try to make sure your megaphone is on. Dee, can you speak again?
Right down.
Hello, Dee.
Hello.
A little bit better? All right, Tom's checking your audio here. And we have audio to the stream? Excellent. All right, so at this point, for all you guys in the back of the room, I'm going to ask you, go ahead, grab another snack if you want to. Come on front, take some seats. We are going to get started here in about 2 minutes. And thanks, everybody on the stream, for joining us. We will get moving in about 2 minutes, exactly at 6:15 today. Hopefully, no audio disasters take place.
Ominous.
Right.
Oh, and for those of you on the in frame right now, be aware that your audio is playing into this room and on the live stream.
Thank you for the warning. So no more popsicle stick jokes, I suppose?
Yeah, I probably want to keep those jokes.
Kids' jokes are the best.
I agree.
Where's the other microphone?
Got a couple minutes to grab a beer or something like that, or a drink, some food.
For Dee and Peter, if you ever make it to Chicago, it's being hosted at 2112, which is a great event venue. They've got snacks, drinks. It's an excellent center for arts and technology. Very nice space. As you can see, a small part of it there off to the right.
Jay, move up front. Oh yeah, so we'll let our virtual speakers, just so you guys are aware, if you don't want to be on camera the entire time, feel free to actually turn your cameras off until you're presenting. It's up to you. If you want to be up there, feel free. But you don't feel the need to be on camera the entire time.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, and with that, we are at 6:15, so I'm going to get us started. As soon as I can get my slides in the right place.
There's a little red X in the upper left of the 3 screens, yeah. Took me a while to figure that one out last time.
All right, I'm getting my screens arranged. There we go. All right. Oops. So welcome, everybody, to the next evolution. Tonight we are going to be talking about the next evolution of training and how training is affecting, industrial training is being used with immersive technology. My name is Matt Wren. I'm the founder of AWE Chicago and the Next Evolution. My passion and expertise spans a whole lot of emerging technologies, so please come up and say hello if you want to learn more about that later, because I don't like to talk about myself. But with that said, the Next Evolution is also AWE Nite Chicago. The next evolution AWE Nite Chicago event series is now and always has been, always will be 100% free to attend. That said, it is not free to produce, so we always put this QR code up here for anyone who wants to donate and help us keep this event running. And this will be up again towards the end of the evening. Leave it up for about 2 more seconds here and then figure out where I'm at on my, there we go. But yeah, please consider donating and supporting the event series if you find any value in what we're doing here. The next evolution is also AWE Nite Chicago. There are more than 30 AWE Nites all over the world. Feel free to use this code if you would like to see a discount to AWE Nite United XR Europe. Sorry, they rebranded it. United XR Europe, which is coming up in December 8th through 10th in Brussels. AWE Asia will be February 2nd through 4th in Singapore, and of course AWE USA in Long Beach, June 10th through 12th. Also, you can always visit awexr.com to learn more about their online courses in AWE Academy. We are always beyond grateful to UL Solutions for sponsoring the entire 2025 The Next Evolution event series. And with that said, I'm also going to welcome our venue sponsor, who's currently taking a picture, to come on up here in a few seconds and talk about 2112, which is the space that we're standing in. Or that one.
This one.
Sure.
All right. Welcome, everybody, here and online. I'm Scott Fetters, founder director of 2112. We spent the last 10 years building community for creatives, sort of a membership-based creative and tech hub. Proud to be the home of VR Chicago Virtual Production Group, and more than 100 other companies in the creative sector. The room we're in now is a small part of a much larger facility that's providing intentional community resources and physical and educational resources for creatives. So I'll be around all night for anyone who wants to say hello, and more info at 2112inc.com. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Scott. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Andrew Towell, who is our virtual host for the evening.
Hey folks, how's everybody doing? My name is Andrew. I am the virtual host for this evening. I'm an XR developer that got my start about 10 years ago, mostly working in augmented reality, building games and experiences. And over the last couple of years, I've been slowly moving into the mixed reality space, and I'm currently working with wearables and bridging the gap between digital and physical objects. And with that, I would normally pass things on to Caroline Dennis to introduce XR Women, but I will do that for her because I'm filling in for the day. Without any further ado, XR Women is a global professional community of over 1,200 women and allies from over 60 countries dedicated to advancing innovation, leadership, and collaboration in immersive technologies. Since its founding in 2020, 200 women have taken the stage sharing their insights, expertise, and passion for immersive technologies. Now, I am currently, and my fellow panelists are in an environment called Frame, which is a web XR platform, which means you can enter this environment from your laptop with a VR or wearable headset, or even a cell phone via a mobile browser. And with that, I will pass it back to Matt to get us started.
I can.
Are we waiting for a slide?
Sorry, Andrew, I'm dealing with a technical problem in the space.
Okay, sorry.
Not sure, Tom, other than stop and That's, yep. Tom has to refresh Frame, so we'll see you all, he'll see you all in a second. I'm gonna let him do that and get reset.
Okay, you let us know.
I still see me there, so that Tom is still in the room. All right, I'm going to keep moving forward. Ooh, can you mute? Is that, yeah, okay. Want to make sure that echo was me muting. So Tom has some technical issues to deal with, but I'm going to keep moving forward while he's dealing with them, and he'll let me know if I have to stop. That said, we have a lot of partners. Turn that slide up? I do. We have a lot of your community partners that are supporting these events, including 1871, 2 Degrees, Envision, and Patched Reality. Special thank you to Patched Reality and Envision for today and the extra help. And we also absolutely have to thank our beverage sponsors, Revolution Brewing and System Seltzers. We'll tell everyone who's going to be grabbing the System Seltzers to take note that they do have 0%, 5%, and 8% alcohol, so make sure you know which one you're grabbing. But we do want to thank them for supporting us by providing our beverages for the evening. And with that, we are here to talk about training. So immersive technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality have been transforming workforce training by giving employees realistic, repeatable, and risk-free environments to learn in without slowing production or raising costs. From manufacturing and logistics to healthcare, hospitality, and public safety, organizations are using these tools to accelerate onboarding, strengthen decision-making, and improve safety and consistency across teams. Studies show that immersive learners train faster, retain more, and feel more confident applying new skills, making this approach especially valuable as industries face skills shortages and rising performance demands. Today's panel is going to explore how immersive training is delivering measurable results, where it's headed next, and what it means for building a more capable and future-ready workforce. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Andrew to introduce Dee.
Thank you. Dee Gutsopoulos combines a psychology background with a passion for learning and development. At ThingLink, Dee helps organizations elevate their training with immersive, interactive experiences. And with that, I would like to invite Dee up to the stage. If you would share your webcam, please. Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing today? I know you can't answer, so I'll just jump on in, and thank you for the intro. So like Andrew mentioned, I'm Dee Gutsopoulos. I'm an enterprise account executive at ThingLink, and my background is in industrial organizational psychology and learning technologies, and I've spent my career looking at one main question: how can organizations move beyond check-the-box training and actually change behavior through learning? Over the past years, I've been working with organizations that were just mentioned: safety, critical operation environments like warehouses, factories, healthcare environments, to help them replace traditional in-person and e-learnings with immersive experiences that feel a lot closer to a learning on the job type of experience and can actually lead to a more proficient workforce. Let's jump to the next slide, please. So ThingLink, in short, is an easy-to-use platform that makes creating immersive learning really simple. With AI-assisted authoring, you can turn real-world environments, 360-degree images, videos, even digital twins into interactive learning experiences with hotspots, assessments, and simple branching scenarios. Everything you build is also multi-device. So it can run on a browser, a mobile device, some environment we're in right now, a VR headset, and it can be delivered either on its own or through your organization's learning management system. That means teams don't have to really choose between XR and accessibility. We can meet learners where they're at, whether it's a contractor in the field or it's somebody at their desk or through a headset. It's really going to be flexible, scalable, and built for that real-world deployment. And if we could just jump to the first video here, I'd love to show a quick example of what this looks like in practice. Got the video going, great. So we can turn traditional learning assets into immersive learning experience. We know that every organization has assets like these. Typically, a SME has dumped this, or a subject matter expert, dumped this knowledge into a text-based type manual. And instead of asking workers to read about these procedures, we're going to be able to let them actually experience them. So they'll be able to move through a 360-degree learning environment and interact with it just like they would on the job. So it's on-the-job training, and this doesn't just make training more engaging, it makes it more flexible so that we can have these learners rehearse these situations virtually. They know the space, they understand the equipment, and they've practiced making the right decisions before ever stepping out onto the floor. So that's one example, and we can jump to the next video now to just walk through the creation flow. So we're able to, AI is at the core of the platform, so you're able to add your text-based materials and prompts to customize the modules and learning styles. And really our platform is meant, you add all these prompts, we're meant to get you 80% of the way there. And then you can customize each of these drag and drop blocks. If you don't have your own images, you can easily convert with AI and create AI generated images with the click of a button. You'll be able to add your own materials, annotations, and in hours you can have an immersive learning experience that can be delivered on any device or headset. We can add learning checks, assessments, get analytics that help test competency, and the best part, you can build it once and deliver it everywhere, even through pass-through, like you'll see here. And we know that not all learners are the same. So we want to make it easy to deliver training where they are and where they learn best, whether it's a customized landing page that your EHS teams use or the L&D team through their LMS. You have that just-in-time learning that isn't just click-through, it's going to be actionable and sticky. And then finally, we could go ahead and jump to the last video here. This is really meant to give you a glimpse of where we're going and what we're doing next. We've recently partnered with Apple Vision Pro to create an app that brings true object and spatial recognition into the learning experience. What you're seeing here is really an early version of the workflow where you can scan a real-world object, annotate it in ThingLink, and then train the Vision Pro to recognize that same object in any physical space, regardless of location. Once it's recognized, the device can overlay guidance, and we'll see that in a second, some steps, warnings, instructional content right onto the object itself, creating a new kind of contextual in just-in-time learning that blends your physical and digital worlds seamlessly. Right now, this is only on Apple Vision Pro, but as hardware continues to evolve with lighter devices, this type of learning will become far more accessible. And this is really where things get exciting. It just gets us back to that core idea of just-in-time, in-context learning, right? A technician walking up to a machine and instantly seeing the correct procedure, layered over the equipment, any safety hazards that are apparent. And this is really the direction that we're heading, and I see the XR space heading, that learning that's truly embedded in the flow of work. And I think we can wrap that there. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Fantastic. This is really interesting. Well, was that folks applauding in the audience? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But thank you. A wonderful presentation. It brings up lots of questions right off the bat, especially the last portion where you're scanning things in. If I'm understanding that correctly, could you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've done, and it's with Apple specifically because their iPhones have the LiDAR camera, so the 3-prong camera. But what we're doing is we're walking around, we're scanning the object, not just to scan it and create a model of it, but to train the Apple Vision Pro to recognize it. And this can also happen, it can be a space. If it's a quarter of a room or a spatial environment in general, it's just training. So once you put that headset on, you're able to interact with that object or space through the headset.
That's fascinating. So along these lines, you've mentioned interacting with the content a few times. Now, when we start wearing headsets or when you put one on, the majority of the time we are interacting via controllers. Now, are there any plans or do you already have something built in where people can interact using hand tracking or any sort of haptic feedback to really immerse? Or do you think that's even necessary for some of these topics?
So the hand tracking is going to be possible on the devices that you're going to be able to do that. So for instance, the Vision Pro, it's 100% eye and hand tracking. So it does follow that, but also we plan on always staying device agnostic. So as other hardware and technologies catch up to this piece of Apple Vision Pro, we plan on being available on any headset that has this type of technology.
So you've mentioned a few times, not a few times, I'm sorry, you mentioned a few industries that are currently adopting them and that you are targeting. Where do you see the greatest growth and adoption of these types of technologies in education?
Oh gosh, it's definitely manufacturing is a big one. Really, we're talking about any industries that they're working around with heavy machinery where there are high risks of failure or something uh, really bad happening, like losing a limb being really extreme here. But really, any types of environments like that, those are going to be the most critical and that we're going to see the highest growth in.
So along those lines, you're mentioning, bad things happening that we want to train people to avoid, right? So we're saving companies money in that aspect. But when you're talking to some of these companies, what are some of the misconceptions that you hear from them about these technologies that might stop them from adopting them?
Well, first and foremost is immersive training equals VR headsets only. And in reality, right, and you saw some of those experiences, it can, like I mentioned, can be delivered on any device. So it could be mobile, and not everyone likes a headset. People get dizzy. So the ability to spread it across anywhere that you can meet your learners, you build it once, deliver it everywhere. The other piece is always that it's too expensive. It's too complex. Because it's typically, right, if we're talking about a Unity environment, it can take a lot to develop. It takes an XR expert, and it's going to be expensive, especially if you're outsourcing a lot of that. It can be, if you're using a no-code approach, it can be less expensive. And then finally, it's a lot of people think it's just a shiny toy. It's just gamifying it. And really,
Right.
immersive programs are really tightly aligned to KPIs, and some of them that you mentioned, like reducing incidents, faster onboarding, fewer errors. We're going to save money. It's not just engagement for the sake of engagement. It's really meant to hit on a company's KPIs.
With that in mind, do you have a specific example of an ROI that a customer that you have worked with that they've achieved through this implementation?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot, but one of the pieces, and we have some case studies, but I think I'll talk about something other than manufacturing. We do have a healthcare customer, a hospital. They created 360-degree virtual tours of patient rooms and equipment walkthroughs. So instead of having the one-on-one training for onboarding new nurses, they were able to walk through, not only get familiar with the hospital, but walk through the equipment at their own pace, excuse me. Medical devices are one of the things that they can be extremely difficult, and the levels of competency, on these devices vary depending on, do they have previous exposure, experience, and really their result was that the new clinical staff, they were fully ramped 2 weeks faster, and they were able to reduce the amount of incidents or errors based off of that equipment usage.
Wow, that's really impressive. Thank you. This is fascinating information. We've got lots more questions, and I'm sure we'll have some from the audience. But for time, we're going to pass it back to Matt and our presenter there in the space. So thank you again, Dee, and we'll have more questions for you in a bit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dee, and thank you. Peter Vassler has been working as Nimbus's customer success manager for 2 years, but has been obsessed with VR since he first tried Tilt Brush in 2017. And with that, I'm just going to let you go.
Testing. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Okay, yeah, I'm ready for my first slide. Okay, this is obviously not me. This is Jeremy Balinson from the Virtual Human Interaction Lab at Stanford University. And in 2019, he coined an acronym that kind of formalized what we've known in the VR industry for a while, DICE. VR training is best for situations that are dangerous, impossible, counterproductive, or expensive. Next slide. So Nimbus has been making skilled trades training for 15 years now, following the DICE model without really knowing it, ever since my boss, Laurent, left his job in 2011 with nothing but a dream and an embarrassing mastery of rotational kinematics. We have done physical simulators, we've done headset simulators, we've done VR laptop simulators, all focused on skilled trades training. And our specialty is things that require manipulation with your hands, really hands-on, whether you're holding a hammer or a knife or pruning shears or a welding torch. That's kind of where we shine. So a couple years ago, we took all of this institutional knowledge, all of this practice creating blue-collar skilled trades training, and came up with, next slide, chemistry. We traded our blue collars for blue gloves. Next slide. Now, it's not actually as strange a transition as you might think. There are at least as many ways to kill yourself in a well-equipped chemistry lab as there is a construction site, although that might just be because I still don't have a real sense of smell after an unsupervised interaction with sulfuric acid in 7th grade. But there are a lot of hazards, and there are a lot of expensive pieces of equipment you really don't want to break. On the bottom right there is a bioreactor that costs 3 times as much as your average welding rig, and even that little analytical balance on the bottom left costs more than my first car. Next slide. So we partnered with a very prestigious university in Paris called Le CNAM, and we created a digital twin of their agri-food and pharma chemistry lab. Since it rolled out in the fall of 2021, I believe, 600 students have gone through it, and this summer they actually published a paper based on the results, because remember, kids, the difference between screwing around and science is writing it down. And one of the co-authors of this paper is actually watching in frame, so everybody say hi to Christian. Next slide. So because they're academics, they use 2 different metrics for the students and for the faculty. For the students, they used a German questionnaire called Attractive, which asks students to rank things like on a spectrum between 2 opposing adjectives, complex versus simple, or bold versus conventional. And then they divided these all up into pragmatic, attractiveness, and then a series of different types of hedonic qualities. I don't know why they kept using hedonic. It's probably because they're German. And across the board, Nimbus Chemistry scored very, very well. Next slide. We're right there in that upper right-hand quadrant where it is functional, it's attractive, and people actually enjoy using it. I think if you look at the actual questions in the questionnaire, it's pretty obvious where we lost points. For example, one of the pragmatic questions is to rank it on a line between human and technical, and one of the hedonic questions is connected versus isolating. And I think we're really making a lot of progress in connecting people through VR, but for a lot of things, it's still a very isolating experience. And then for the faculty, they used what's called the system usability scale, which has been around since the 80s. And CNAM had this really interesting setup where they had in the room the chemistry professors, but they also had an IT staff that would help support the equipment, help support students learning how to use it, set up the classroom, break it down afterwards. And so they divided up the questionnaire among these 2 groups of faculty. And I think it's interesting. So first of all, the scores are normed so that higher is always better. So the best thing Nimbus Chemistry got was the system is not unnecessarily complex. But I don't think it's a surprise that our worst score was, I would need the support of a technical person to use this system. Because we are a long ways from the age of the Vive, where you have to set up lighthouses and it takes 30 minutes, but it is still a system that you need to be trained on before you can use it. So my 2 takeaways from our experience with Nimbus Chemistry is that VR is certainly not a solution to every training need, but it is a solution to more training needs that you might think. Let DICE be your guide. And the second thing is, it doesn't matter how good the software is if teachers can't integrate it into their classrooms. One of our sort of passions outside of the headset has been, we have a training called BitVR, Become an Immersive Teacher, and it's a 2-day training that just teaches teachers how to use VR as a teaching exercise. And I think you need good software and good training for the teacher before a successful deployment. That's all I got.
All right, thank you, Peter. So going back to kind of how you started, where you mentioned that NIBS focuses on the skilled trades and like things that you're doing with your hands, what training challenges do you most often see in the skilled trades? How does VR help close those gaps? And what barriers do you see to adoption?
I had a really good answer to this question, and it has now completely left me. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding, both from the top down and the bottom up when it comes to VR skilled trades. I think a lot of managers think that VR is like the little training chips in the Matrix, where you put it into the machine and the guy twitches for a couple seconds and all of a sudden he knows Kung Fu. It's not that easy. You can't put 30 kids and 30 headsets in a classroom, lock the door for a week, and come out with 30 master welders. And then from the bottom up, I think teachers don't have the time to learn how to use it. They don't trust the technology necessarily, and I think, honestly, they worry it's going to replace them. And our party line has always been, this is not a tool to replace teachers. This is a tool to augment teachers. It's a tool to let them get their students further, faster, and cheaper. But you need buy-in from the top and the bottom before you can have a successful deployment.
All right. So we'll jump into manufacturing a little bit. With manufacturers under pressure to onboard workers faster, what types of tasks do you think benefit most from VR simulations?
Well, going back to DICE, anything that is dangerous, well, impossible is not as much of a concern, but dangerous, counterproductive, or expensive.
Can you dig in on counterproductive?
Counterproductive, how that separates from the other categories is a little hard. My favorite example for this is like, you're training surgeons in VR, for example. And it's not dangerous for the surgeon if you are working with a live person and then all of a sudden you like cut the wrong vein, but it's definitely counterproductive to kill somebody on the operating table as part of your training. So yeah, I think we've really in VR, we've hit the low-hanging fruit first. People have been using immersive VR simulators for aviation training since the 80s. Welding came on board in the 90s and the early aughts. But I think there are still nooks and crannies where people are getting hurt and they don't need to get hurt, or things are being broken and they don't need to be broken, that VR can really help with.
Okay, so on that, how do you balance realism with practicality when you're designing simulations for things like welding or machining, equipment operations, or medical? Yeah,
so, to a certain extent, you gotta go with practicality first. It doesn't matter how realistic something is if it's not practical enough to work. But I would also divide realism into multiple different categories. I tried a competitor's software once, and it was beautiful. It was gorgeous. Like ray tracing, professional voice acting, and then it gets to the part where you weld the seam, and it doesn't matter what the angle of your welding torch, it doesn't matter how fast you're going, it's just press A to weld. We've kind of taken the opposite approach, where it is real enough for you to feel like you're in an immersive situation. The brain does a really good job filling in the gaps. Where we've spent all of our energy is the actual interactivity realism, that the machine works the way it does. You need to tilt your hand or keep your hand at that angle, at that speed for it to work. And I think that works a lot better. And at the end of the day, after a couple minutes in VR, when the wow factor wears off, it doesn't really matter how many polygons that button has.
All right, and last question is because I didn't hear you actually bring it up any time during your presentation. How are you guys working with AI?
So we've got a couple different things going with AI. We have something that's going to hit the market very soon where it's a construction site safety, and the people that you are working with in the simulation are AI agents. And so you can tell people what to do and they will go do it. They're AI, or your supervisor is an AI and asking you questions, and based on that feedback doing different things. And at the same time, that determines what kind of score you get on that. We're also working on AI for career guidance, a little career guidance counselor that appears over your shoulder after you try something in our career discovery app, and talks you through, all right, you did this thing well, you did this thing not so well. Let's take that skill, see what other industries it might transfer to well, and this is what you should consider.
All right. Thank you, Peter. We'll have you back up here for the group discussion, but you can turn off the mic and step down now, and I will hand it back over to Andrew to introduce our other presenter, also named Peter.
Why, thank you. Yes, not to get things confused, we will introduce Peter Wittig. Peter Wittig is one of the co-founders of Motive.io. Using Motive's platform, he helps enterprise launch and scale their XR training initiatives. And with that, Peter, if you wouldn't mind turning on your webcam and joining us for your presentation.
Oh, sure. I was zooming in on the slides, but let me share my webcam first. There we go. Can you see me?
We can, thank you.
Great. So I'm Peter Wittig. Good to be here with all of you today. I'm from Milwaukee originally, and now I'm in Vancouver, BC. So if we could jump to the next slide, and we'll dive right in. So at Motive.io, we make an enterprise XR training platform, which we call the Motive XMS. It's a bit of an homage to a CMS or an LMS, and we've been going with the line the LMS for XR. So let's jump to the next slide. So we, along with some of the others, I believe Dee mentioned it as well, and Peter, we've talked in the past too, but being able to access these experiences in a lot of different places, making sure that the data that is produced goes where it needs to go. We very much focus on the enterprise market, but in addition to that, we have a really strong partner program where we like to work with a lot of other XR training companies. We find that, and are of the opinion, that no XR company has everything that an enterprise needs. And so the more you can work well with other XR players, I think the better it works out for the client and then for the industry as a whole. Go to the next slide. So here are a few of our clients. I'll kind of pepper this deck with a couple of stories as we go along, but it cuts across industry. And I think I think of XR training like a spreadsheet. No one says, hey, I need, the mom and pop bakery spreadsheet, or I need the law firm spreadsheet, or I need, the hedge fund spreadsheet. Everyone knows if you just use it for what it's good for, a spreadsheet will work well in all of those. And much the same with XR training. If you use it for what it's good for, it works in a wide range of industry. So let's go to the next slide. So the Motive XMS, what we really aim to do is be a nice bit of connective tissue. And it's a piece of infrastructure that you can run on a shared instance that we've got. You can host it yourself. But what we want to do is say, you've got a whole bunch of content. Maybe you made that content with our tools. Maybe you made it with someone else's. Doesn't matter, but all that data can flow back to our system. Maybe you've got users that you want to do a POC with, or maybe you want to integrate directly with your LMS using something like SSO. That's all possible too. Maybe you need to get that data out into something like Power BI, where you need the records to flow directly to your LMS or LRS. We can handle that as well. So really just being this nice piece of infrastructure that can make the data that you're producing and the training that your people are using useful and integrated into the other systems you're using to track and to better learn and understand how this is benefiting your company. Let's go to the next slide. We take a lot of time and effort to be able to meet the security requirements of a large enterprise. This is a great way to partner with other XR companies as well. we've never failed an IT sec review. You want to host, you want to use our platform on AWS or Azure, that's fine. You want your own private cloud instance, that's fine. We can manage it for you. You want to manage it and you just want the install scripts, you can do that too. We found there's usually clients have tried XR at one point, and sometimes they have pilots that went really well, but then they run up against IT and the whole thing is over at that point. We can then say, well, we've got a way for you to bring that content on through our platform, and then that company that made that content is going to be able to make more because it went well. It can roll it out at a larger scale, and kind of one of those everybody wins scenarios. Everybody's getting better training, and it all moves through. So focusing on getting past and getting into an enterprise is really a large part of what we do. Let's go to the next slide. So we'll talk a bit about some of the tools that we've got for building and for learning. So let's just jump into the next slide quickly. So we've noticed that large enterprises typically want to do a POC or a pilot first. So we built all of these tools to be able to manage users, to manage content, to directly get people into tools. And so you could do all that with the platform. As soon as that pilot goes well and you could show that the data proves that that's the case, they say, okay, I need to integrate this with my LMS, or I want this to go, the XAPI to go to my LRS. We're ready to go right away. So if you're using SCORM or XAPI, we can integrate out of the box. It's not any writing of code. We do it on a per standards basis. So as long as your LMS supports one of those, we're ready to go when you are. Let's go to the next slide. The launcher app. We put a lot of time and effort into making sure that it is a learner, when they put on a headset, usually, we want them to get into the content that they need to train in as fast as possible. And so we developed this Launchpad app that can give them access to any number of modules that will open not only the right APK, but it will open directly to the right module that they've been assigned. So they can go to the LMS that they're used to using, get a code, or we're looking at doing cool QR code scans with that as well, with the headset, and it will immediately put you right into it. One of our clients, Johnson & Johnson, was a big fan of this, and that's really helped their learners access the content faster. Let's go to the next slide. So the SDKs, we've got a few different ones. I mentioned a scenario where maybe a large enterprise has done a pilot and with a company, and that company wasn't able to pass ITSec, but it was a great pilot. You can use our lightweight SDK to quickly integrate with our platform. We'll pass ITSec reviews, and then all of a sudden that content that other XR company made can be used right away. So they're going to go in, get the benefit of that. They'll usually get more services work as a result. So we don't want any sunken costs. You don't want to lose any momentum with an enterprise. If something's working, you got to find a way to keep that thing working and expand the way it works within that organization. So lightweight SDK is that. The full SDK complements our authoring tool, and I'll talk a bit about that as we go. So let's move on to the next piece there. So our authoring tool is unique. I don't know of another one that's quite like it. The way we've approached it is, I say most VR training is built like a music box, and if you ever want to change the tune, you send it back to the person who made the machine. Our approach is you build a 3D environment, and that's your stage or your theater. And you can make it do anything that Unity or Unreal allows you to do. Completely custom map whatever you want. Then that can be hooked to a web-based drag and drop authoring tool. So every feature you need to have and want to have, you can build. And then that can be controlled by a team. And what it lets people do is the XR developers can work in parallel with the L&D people. So the L&D people are able to create and iterate the content once they get the first build, and then the Unity and Unreal folks can then just keep iterating on the builds and creating more content. Now there are kind of all-in-ones where they've got tools, but I'd say all-in-ones is like if the app does what you need, it's great, and if it doesn't, you're kind of waiting for their roadmap. Where other ones are saying, hey, I've got node-based editors inside of Unity or Unreal, and that either makes it so a trainer needs to kind of learn a bit more Unity Unreal. Our approach was to say both of those groups should have a first-class tool to doing what it is that they need to do. Having said all that, this is totally optional. It's a really cool tool, and one of our energy company clients who we had up on the slides before, they can produce their content a lot faster, and that's the stat coming from that large energy company. But most of our clients just use the platform. And if you want use another content authoring tool, by all means do it. You can then send the data back through our platform, integrate with their systems, and we're very happy to do that too. So let's move on to the next one. Let's jump right into a bit of AI. Matt was asking about this, so we'll talk a bit about it. So we've got a, can we go to the next slide as well? So we've got it's a large kind of retailer. It's kind of nationwide retailer in Canada, and they were doing warehouse picking training. And the cool thing about that is when you reduce training by a certain percentage, it really has a knock-on effect. So if someone goes to the warehouse, picks the wrong item, and sends it off, that triggers a return, and then that costs money. So by reducing it by 10%, it saves $18 million a year. What they wanted then was this cool AI. That's kind of the ROI side, but what they wanted was an AI assistant inside of there that knew the procedures and you could talk to it about it. So we implemented that, and it was pretty cool. You could talk to it in English, French, Hindi, or Punjabi, and it will kind of seamlessly just be able to pick up on whatever you're doing and talk to you about the training. What was interesting is when we built that, other companies have expressed an interest. But what's pretty cool is they then say, you know what, hey, I like this AI. It's pretty cool. I want to use it not in VR. I want to use it just as a little chat bubble, like on a site on my network, or I want to use it with a video training avatar that I've already built something out with. And so we built out a whole other piece of the platform called Motive Intelligence Studio, which allows you to kind of manage, create, and then quickly deploy whatever agents that you want or AI assistants wherever you need them to be. And kind of talking, I thought Dee's made a good point there, saying in context learning, and we very much think the same thing. I agree with her there. Could we move to the next slide? One of the things we found about AI as well is the two things people ask us the most about is latency and cost. We use conversational AI, which is like chatbot style from before Gen AI, and with Gen AI, everyone wants that now. But the old conversational AI, you can use in conjunction with it. Most of the time, there are a set of FAQs that people will ask again and again. And so one of the tools we've created is called like an FAQ agent, and you can use conversational AI, this cheaper, faster AI for those FAQs, and then if it's not in there, it uses the Gen AI to then get the answer it needs at that point. So it's kind of blending these two things to get people what they want and also kind of reduce the cost and improve the speed. So let's go to the next one. ROI. So let's keep moving on this one. Funny thing is we had a client who said you must integrate with our LMS, and we put a lot of time into that, and those are the tools we have now. And then the minute we did that, they said, well, we hate our LMS. What else do you have? And so we created a lot of dashboards that allow you to track, of course, and for people who have not done an integration, they're doing their pilot or the POC, they need a way to prove that this is working, and whatever metric it is that you've chosen to track, you can show that it is indeed being moved by the new training that you're doing. I would say that most people that just import the data into Power BI, make their own reports, that's totally possible too. So let's go to the next one. Assessments. So if you want to do assessments in SCORM, XAPI, and then we can do additional assessments there, and all that can then funnel right back to where you're going. But it's easy if you're using our authoring tool to add that. If you're using our lightweight SDK, you can just add a line of code, and then that will send it off as well. Again, one of those very large energy companies that was on our first slide said the reason we use Motive, other than the security credentials, is that you do a really good job of separating the software and the data and making it easy for us to get the data into whatever other system we need. And I'd never thought of it that way, but it was an interesting point, and I was glad you brought it up. So good way to separate the data. Let's go to the next one. I think we're about at the end. Yeah. So anyways, whether you're making XR, whether you're an enterprise yourself, love to chat. And if you're making XR for those enterprises, maybe we can help. We very much like to work with everyone we can to make sure that the end client gets what they need for their team. And so I think the more the merrier, and the more inclusive, the better off that winds up being. That's all I got on that. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Peter. A few questions before we move on and have questions from everybody. For those of us that aren't truly in the know or might have missed it, you mentioned LMS quite a few times. Could you let us know what that acronym means and elaborate just a little bit more?
Sure, it's a learning management system, and it is effectively it's usually winds up being a single source of truth at a lot of these companies, and LMSs have been around for a long time at this point, and it's a way for companies to track the training that people have done, and perhaps in some cases they're also tracking how well they do on the training, but it allows them to say, I can look up an employee, have they done this training, that training, whatever, and for compliance, and that's really been helpful. It's used for a wide variety of things, but that's the system that when you're bringing in XR, they're usually saying, well, I can track all my training in this one system, and that's why integrating with it is so important.
Fascinating. So along those lines, you mentioned at one point that some of the data that we gather from XR and these learning systems end up coming up against blockers when they reach IT. Can you give us an example of how your system helps move that data past those blockages?
Well, it's more that just IT won't allow you to access any of their systems. And you know, we've been SOC 2 Type 2 compliant for several years. And frankly, I found with a lot of L&D groups, like IT can be a sore point for them. I can't wait to talk to IT. I find they're a very consistent group. Regardless of where you're going, they have very specific requirements, and if you meet them, they'll let you through. For a lot of people who are making awesome XR content, they put a lot of time and effort into being awesome content creators. They haven't put a lot of time into doing the infrastructure that IT needs to see at these large organizations. So really what you can do is run a pilot, but you're not ever touching the enterprise system or any enterprise system. And then when the pilot goes well, like, great, can we come in? And IT says, absolutely not, because I need to see this. That's where we can step in and help out.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's really fascinating stuff, and I'm sure we'll have some other questions from the audience. But right at the moment, thank you again, Peter. I'm going to hand it back to Matt, and I believe we will have Q&A.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Andrew. And that's right. We are going to go and get all of our presenters back. So, Peter, here in the physical space, you can come back up at stage, grab your microphone. Patrick there has the microphone for questions in the physical space here. Here's how this works for those of you who are unfamiliar. We do encourage our audience to share your questions by raising your hand in person or in frame, or if you're on YouTube, typing your questions into the chat in the YouTube chat. Andrew and I will do our best to ask your questions in about 30, 35 or so minutes that we have remaining. But we will try to do it in the order that we see questions come up. So I'm going to look out here and see if we have a first question in the audience. If not, I can throw one out there. And I can't see. And Andrew, you're going to have to let me know a little bit if you see people raising their hands in the virtual space.
Virtual space, got it.
Well, with that said, one of the things that we really wanted to focus on with this particular topic, and I'll give you guys a couple seconds to, I'll ask the question and I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it before I throw it to you. And again, for our presenters, feel free to actually just talk to each other as well. But we did want to focus on ROI on this. You know, we've done training as a topic for this event series a lot of times, but we wanted to focus on actually saying, okay, listen, to get past the concept of this thing being a toy, to get past the idea of, hey, what does this technology actually deliver to a company? Like, if I'm making an investment of $50,000, $100,000, $500,000, what am I expecting to see back? Like, how is this actually going to help me? I'm drilling on so you guys can think about this, because in a second I'm just going to call on one of you. But that said, so, you know, for example, I worked last year. What year is it? Yeah, I think it was last year. I worked last year with, I'll say, a state government, and we were working on training for law enforcement. And what came out of it was, okay, you know, as much as they were very focused on, there were specific performance metrics that they wanted to meet. One of the things that I was encouraged to see that they were actually thinking about was, okay, from a cost perspective, it's going to cost us this much to implement this solution. Granted, we're hoping to achieve metrics that we currently can't hit with our existing training programs, we also want to make sure that we're able to deliver this training in a way that would be cheaper than the alternative methods that they could potentially do it. And when you start to think about things that you can do in virtual reality that you can't really do easily in physical reality, so for example, large group training with 3 or 4 instructors all being in the same space at the same time. Okay, there's a lot of costs associated with that. There's transportation costs, there's the time of the trainers, there's the time of the people that you are taking out of your workforce to actually put into a training simulation. And then there's, how many reps can they actually get through in a simulation in a single day? And when you start to think about the fact that, okay, well, if you're putting a bunch of people in a physical room and they're running through training scenarios, how consistent is it going to be from one group to the next group? So if you're looking for things like you want consistency and consistent performance, you want to be able to have people run it multiple times, but you want to reduce those things like transportation costs and all the costs of having the people be able to be in the same place at the same time. That's where we started to say, okay, there's an actual dollars and cents ROI to the solutions that we're providing for them. I think I've stalled long enough, and so at this point, we're going to go in reverse order. I'm actually going to call back on Peter Wittig here. Is there, give me one example of a customer where you're actually presenting a financial return to them and how they're achieving it.
Sure. Well, I'll just go back to that warehouse picking example there. I'll give one more actually, but in that case, picking the wrong item in a warehouse, sending it out as a return, costs money, and it's a value you can quantify. Then they can say, well, if we did that X amount less, how much is that going to be? And then so proving in a pilot that, hey, if you do use this training, that will reduce the amount of returns that will be generated. So you got to show first that the training works and that it is going to influence that business metric. And then once it does, then when you hit 10%, in that case, it says 18 million a year when you roll that out nationwide. So I think that is not an uncommon thing. You're spending mid 6 figures and then you save kind of high 7, low 8. And I think that's really, I look for those, and that can be 1 or 2 procedures, it can be a few, but digging in. The other one I'll mention is there's a large area, we're working with Emirates Airlines, and we just went live in October. But one of the things that you need to do is retrain every so often, and inside of a physical simulator. And we've noticed that if there's a physical simulator and that becomes a bottleneck, this is true for other customers as well. A bottleneck means people can't start doing the work that they need to do until they get through, and building a huge physical simulator is extremely expensive. But if you put VR training in front of that, not only do they get through that physical simulator faster, any trainers who are in that simulator are more pleased because they're working on the finer points, because they got the 101 stuff down by the time they get in. And we just went live in October, and just in October, we had over 2,000 people go through that training. So it's really been kind of just hum it as a way to get people through, and then through that physical simulator faster.
And on that, were you measuring, just out of curiosity, would you guys measure the cost of like first time through the physical training? It costs this much, it takes this much time. And if you're able to put 2,000 people through the VR ahead of time, how much of a cost reduction that would? Did you guys actually measure that in reduction at all, or no?
Well, I hope to share some of that soon. So,
gotcha. So measured it, yes, but can share it, no.
Yeah, I was mainly just pleased with the throughput, and knowing that if someone needs to get through a physical simulator before they can get back on and do their job, think about if there's not enough people to get back on, and then the cost of that too.
Excellent. Peter, you want to go for an actual ROI use case?
Sure. So our customers are primarily high schools, training centers, community colleges, and they don't know how to measure ROI a lot of the time, or don't bother. So our approach to try to help prove the ROI to them has been to come up with our own LMS. Not quite as shiny as Peter's, but we like it. That tracks everything that happens in the headset. The problem with tracking things about safety, if you're trying to train safety, is You can't, have a before and after, like, all right, before this VR training, how many times did one of our employees blow up the nuclear power plant, and how many times afterwards did they blow up the nuclear power plant? So you have to look at leading indicators. How many times a hazard was missed, how many times a procedure wasn't followed. And that sort of thing is really easy to track in VR. Our construction site safety even tracks, like, all right, where did your eyes go? Did you look at this thing before you performed that task? And so I can't give you any dollar signs or euro signs, but we're trying to get there as best we can.
Okay, Dee?
Yeah, one example, and I do have numbers for Mitsubishi Electric. They utilized ThingLink to train their HVAC technicians, and prior to ThingLink, they were doing 100% in-person training. They were flying people out there. They were paying, and they saved over $260,000 in 1 year from going to that in-person approach to we're doing this VR training. They utilize us through Meta Quest headsets, but they do also deliver it through their LMS for, again, those learners who don't want to throw on a headset. So $260,000 1 year. They, on paper alone, I love this, they spent over $90,000 on just printing out paper. What's crazy is I talk to aviation companies, and yes, the pilot training, they do simulate those, but when they're talking about like, hey, how to fly into, let's say Brazil, that's gonna be a different flight pattern, it's gonna be a different type of flying than flying into Athens, Greece. That type of training, they still deliver with those paper materials, and it's on site, and they're bringing people on site. So not only is that cost for people to come in, it's also time. So we're also, a big indicator is the time saved by your learners, by your instructors delivering training in a virtual immersive environment.
Awesome. Looking for any training, no questions in the room? All right. Give me a second, let me move into mine.
Well, I've got a question.
Yeah.
Since you like to bring up AI, and we talked about it a little bit, and we've been talking about costs, I'm curious, as this technology is adopted in these various different platforms, and this is a question for all of you, if environmental costs and energy costs usages of these AIs in your platform is being considered.
Who are you throwing it to?
I was throwing it to everybody, sorry.
I'll jump in on that, and to be honest, I don't know. That's a great question. So I think I have a very simple answer. I'm not sure. I don't know if that is something that we consider.
I don't know the answer to that either, because there's a lot of factors there. So you look at what your inference would be. You look at potentially there's a lot of power, the power to power the computers and the cloud, or the headsets, and then but you might very well be saving, like as Dee said, if you're saving that many flights, that's a whole lot of fuel that isn't getting burned, and so it's hard to, I think you have to take that on a case-by-case basis, but that's an interesting point.
Yeah, I would agree with Peter. I think the power use of AI is not great, but hopefully we are coming out ahead by avoiding, like he said, the flights, or for the sort of stuff we do, like, all right, does one AI question use more energy than running that forklift for 15 minutes for this particular part of the training? Or the fuel for welding rigs, stuff like that. Like, it's not cheap to run the in-person, hands-on actual training either. I think people are just used to, like, okay, we have to have this training warehouse with all this equipment. That's a sunk cost, or that's a cost that they're used to. And then they look at AI and they get scared. But I think on net, we're probably coming out positive.
So we have a question from YouTube, which is going to actually, I don't know how many of you were involved at all in our collaborative workspace, but it's got some echoes there. How much do you guys see that the virtual reality training has been combined with teleoperation? It seems like it would work well, and it would ease some of the worry of someone training themselves potentially out of a job by putting, human minds into a machine rather than things like using AI to control machines. So have you guys thought about teleoperation and how that would play into this at all? Sorry, the reason I'm saying this broke up, just so you guys are about, I think 2 months ago is when we did collaborative workspaces, and we had Victor presenting specifically on a lot of stuff related to teleoperation. So we unfortunately the expert on that topic was 2 months ago, but I'll let you guys answer as well because it came in.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
something cool, but not something that we've done.
I talk a little bit about Apple Vision Pro, so I'll talk about that, but the ability for the AirPlay and be able to share what you're viewing and have that instruction through is something that we are working with them as well. It's not quite there, but that is something that, yes, we've definitely considered. With the HoloLenses becoming obsolete now too, I think there's gonna be more technology, and again, the hardware that'll come up, that'll allow that instruction, that actual human instruction through a headset.
So the see what I see remote expert, basically?
Correct, yes.
That's where I'd jump in on that one. Same, just you got somebody there, and you got somewhere else that does know. So again, not putting them on an airplane. But yeah, same.
Okay. So Dee, I'm going to jump in on something that you said earlier because, psychology plays a huge role in how people learn. And I'm curious how you're seeing sort of psychology principles being used in the designing of immersive experiences and seeing if that is sticking or not.
Yeah, I mean, psychology plays a lot in design of anything. I mean, it really comes down to how does the brain actually learn? So I think when we're looking at designing an actual learning environment, we want to make sure, one, and I've said this a few times, that it's contextual, right? It's real context. We do want to tell a story, though, as well, and I always say this to people I talk to, because there needs to be some type of emotional factor or enough realism to make it memorable. Make them take action. So active learning, make them take action to make decisions, and also keep the steps small to avoid cognitive overload, right? There's a lot of learning concepts that tie directly into psychology, such as just micro-learning in general. We don't want to overload anyone. We don't want to give them too much training at once. We want to keep them just short enough and make sure that it is going to be sticky and transfers to the real world environment that's actually relevant to their role and everyday responsibilities. So it's really intentionally designing your learning around how people form durable memories and transfer skills to those real situations. Does that answer your question?
It did.
Do you want me to dive deeper?
Yep, no, that's fine. So Peter Wittig, I'm going to throw this at Peter Wittig first. What do you see as some of sort of the, I guess, what are the training tasks or the environments that you think are benefiting most for your customers?
I think, I would only take a client where I think that if we move forward with it, we'll save them a lot of money. I never want to work with someone who's like, I want to do a VR project, because it's got to say, hey, no, all of a sudden it's like I'm going to have this huge rush, and I need more people to be ready to do the work, and I've got a date where that's going to happen. And we used to have people shadow somebody, and now there's too many people and we can't do it that way anymore. Or there's a procedure here that it's 45 steps long, and when you goof it up, you damage a machine that's worth 6 figures or more, or things like that, where it's really going to be clear where if you have an improvement in a specific metric, it's going to work. Now, I do think that you can find those, or the physical simulator, like we worked with, there's a BC Women's Hospital here, and we're training anesthetists, and they set up a physical room, and it's half a day to set up the room. It's 3 doctors, 4 nurses. Those people are in there training people, and they're not saving lives as they normally would be, but you know, being able to reduce the amount of time they could spend in that physical environment, work on some of the finer points by prepping the trainees before with VRs is a really good one too, because the cost of that room, the staff, all very quantifiable. But I do think you can use it across industries as long as you pick the right use case. There's a lot of good use cases in a lot of industries. So long procedures, physical simulators, expensive machines, dangerous stuff, I would do it.
Okay. I'll throw this one out just kind of generally. This is more, you know, obviously those of us who have been working with this technology and doing this implementation work for a lot of years are familiar with all of the benefits of what this can offer for, frankly, the people that are going to implement it. How do we make, you know, what I've said for years, and part of the reason that I run this event series is because I've always basically said that if you put people in VR headsets, that's the easiest way to show them the value. How do we get this out to more, frankly, more industries, more customers, more of the folks that are, frankly, very steeped in their day-to-day, they're just dealing with keeping their companies alive, they're, you know, obviously for some of the, you know, as Peter Wittig mentioned, you're dealing with a lot of the larger companies in Canada. How do you make this accessible to the smaller companies, to the people where it could have a lot of impact, but they might not have the resources of, you know, a major manufacturer? I think one of the slides that I saw said something like 90% of all manufacturers are under 50 employees. How do we make it accessible to those companies? And this is for all of you, so feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I know you and I talked about that at a conference, Matt, and that's a really good point. You know, I almost some of the stuff that Peter G is doing is kind of more along that line, because it's, you know, a whole lot of stuff that people need to know and could be useful to a whole lot of people. But I'll just leave it at that and maybe pass it off.
Yeah, I think the prevalence of VR headsets with the prices coming down and Meta taking a generous loss on each headset has been really helpful, because now I can come up to somebody and 9 times out of 10 their son has a headset, their nephew has a headset, and I can say like, all right, steal your nephew's headset and I'll you know, push a demo onto it and give it a try. And the more it's out there, the less scary it is. That's a double-edged sword, because usually people have it for gaming, and so they think of it as a toy. But I think it's pretty easy once you put on a headset and do, you know, even the most simple, you know, training style interaction, that you can see the value of it. And so just being able to, you know, say, or go down to Best Buy and pick a 3S up for $300, you know, at the scale of, at the size of the savings you could have if these things worked, like that $300 just to play and see what you think of it is, I think, something that a lot of people have been willing to make. Does that make sense?
It does.
Thank you.
Dee?
Yeah, I think unfortunately, and I come up with to this a lot because I speak to a lot of learning and development departments, and they're not always given the budget that other departments in an organization are. So the first thing I always say is change management is key. So it's really about delivering the value from those ROI metrics, because it's really that top-down approach. We need to make it a little bit more bottom-up, and by doing that and allowing that the content creation be democratized, that can also speed up the process. Also, just again, being able to get to the right people in an organization. I think the change management really comes from managers and being able to get them involved in the process and get them to understand. I think where I'm going with this is a lot of EHS teams I talk to, they are buying a product for themselves, and they have the budget to buy it for themselves, and they see the value in it because it's the content creation process they can actually do. They are not instructional designers. They don't have access to the LMS system, and those buying processes are going to be a lot faster. So if we could get those managers who typically are used to in-person training, I'm going to show you hands-on how to do this, to understand that we're dealing with a different generation of workers that will actually benefit from learning in a virtual environment. Before they get hands-on, it'll build that confidence. So it really starts with getting in the managers' heads. And I always say that to any L&D department that I talk to is, who's delivering this training? Because you know the value. Who doesn't see the value, and how can we get them to see that value?
All right, so I'll have a quick question, rapid fire for all three of you. This came in the chat in Frame. How do you handle accessibility for people with disabilities using VR?
I'll jump in really quick. We start in education, so accessibility is really important, and we have a full accessibility player, and that's also why we're device agnostic, because people get dizzy. It's a thing with VR headsets. So again, we built accessibility in our product, and that's one of our core pieces, especially working with higher education institutions.
Yeah, there are certain limits. Like if you are vision impaired, being in a VR headset is going to be a challenge. We spend a lot of effort making sure that our headsets run at least 90 frames per second, and I have very, very few instances of people getting VR sickness. Other things that we've done have been, we have dyslexic-friendly fonts, we have colorblind mode, but a lot of it is just like, if you have mobility issues, you're not going to be able to visit a lot of these places. We can't get you up on scaffolding in real life, but we can get you up on scaffolding in VR. And so that's kind of the way I look at it.
I think from our side, being able to use different devices, but the platform itself is a piece of infrastructure, and we don't have any off-the-shelf content at all. And so any content that we make or someone uses our tools to make can be made and target different devices and made in a way that will work for their workforce. And so really each client would have control over the way they need to deliver and accommodate all the users in their organization.
All right, so I got one more question before we get to final comments. And this one's going to be a little bit of a challenge question. Is what do you think would be the most difficult thing to train somebody to do using VR? So what would be the hard, not, it doesn't necessarily need to be the hardest thing that you've actually faced so far, but what do you think would be the hardest skill or job or task to train somebody to do using VR? Stumping everybody on this one. That's great. Go ahead, Peter.
Well, I mean, like, I'm guessing you don't mean bad ideas. Like accounting would be really hard to train somebody to do in VR, but that's not exactly what you're going for.
Maybe.
We once got a request to train people how to use Salesforce in VR, and I was just like, I just thought maybe you could just use a 2D computer for that, but that would have been hard.
I was going to say software training would be extremely difficult.
Okay. All right, so the way that closing statements work, and I'm going to let you guys know. So each panelist is going to have about 20 seconds for closing statements. It can be, this is your time. You can speak about whatever you want. You can pitch your company, you can talk about your solutions, you can talk about where you think the technology is going to go. It's entirely up to you. You have about 20 to 30 seconds just to go with whatever you want. After that, Andrew will give his closing remarks. I will give my closing remarks, and then we'll do some housekeeping. And after that, we will get back to, you guys can do some more networking in the virtual space. We'll do some networking here in the physical space. But I think I've stalled enough. I'm going to call you guys in a random order. It's really fun to try and call you in random order when two of you are named Peter. But that said, we'll go with Peter W. first.
20 seconds?
20 to 30, take your time.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate being invited. If you are working on enterprise training, at an enterprise, at an XR content company, if you are an XR platform company, I know Peter G., you and I have talked before, I'd love to talk again. Dee, I would love to talk with you, and all the good folks at AWE Chicago. We love working with other companies. So if there are things that we have that could be helpful to you, vice versa, I'd love to know about them and love to engage. So reach out to me on LinkedIn, please, and let's talk.
All right, the other Peter.
Thank you guys all for putting up with me for the last hour and a half. I joke that my boss's job is to sell the licenses and my job is to give them away for free. So take a look at our website, membus.com, and if there's anything on there that you want to try out, drop me a line and I'll hook you up with a license to give it a go.
Okay, simple. Dee?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for having me. I know, I don't know if everyone saw, but my cat did make an appearance. It's something that we talked about earlier. But no, I want to say just follow up the same things. I would love to connect with anyone if you want to learn more. I feel like I've already done as much as I can pitching ThingLink and the value of it. So I'd love, if you want to connect, you want to learn more, feel free to. Connect with me on LinkedIn, look on our website, book a demo directly with me. I'd be happy to chat with anyone who's willing.
All right, Andrew, go for it.
All right. Well, first off, I'd just really like to say thank you to all our panelists. It's always fascinating to hear experts in the field come and contribute to these meetings. And I really appreciate this coming from the art side. And as we mentioned before, the sort of gimmick aspect of XR. So I truly appreciate and am grateful to hear practical use cases for this technology. I love it. So thank you very much. And with that, I'll pass it back to Matt.
All right, and so, I mean, the main thing that I've brought this up, I've brought this up a lot in the state of Illinois, particularly recently. And I saw a comment come in just after I finished doing the closing remarks here about somebody talking about AI and how AI is kind of sucking all the air out of the room. And it is. AI has a ton of attention right now. Automation is another piece of that is coming. I don't think we've heard quite as much about it, but I know we're starting to see a lot of the stuff about production robots and things like that coming into play. AI and automation they're coming faster than I think a lot of people have realized. They're already affecting the economy, they're already affecting the job market. And when it comes down to it, one of the things that is going to be something that is absolutely necessary in the future, if you take one step beyond, AI is coming, it's that people who are working are going to need to reskill, upskill, be able to transition, be able to learn things. And one of the fastest and most capable technologies that enables people to do that is virtual reality and augmented reality. And so, you know, one way or another, I think we're going to be forced into starting to see people accelerate adoption of this stuff. I know we've been talking about it a lot at the state level. For those of you who don't know, there is an initiative that we've been spinning up for the last 6 months, basically since the XR Summit. Working title right now is the Illinois XR Center of Excellence. This is a partnership between 2112 and AWE Chicago, where the first sort of big success that we have is we just helped Illinois Tech win a $500,000 grant from Virtualware, because we are trying to accelerate adoption of XR technology in Illinois specifically for accelerating training, upskilling, and reskilling of workforce. And obviously a heavy focus on manufacturing, heavy focus on advanced manufacturing, specifically microelectronics. They have the quantum campus coming, and we're also going to be focusing on healthcare. So I wanted to bring that up because, again, I don't think this is something that can be avoided. I think the awareness of the capabilities of this technology and the speed at which it can help people learn how to do things better, faster, safer, cheaper is something that's not avoidable. Especially with the pace that AI is going to start displacing people in the current workforce, and 2 steps beyond that is automation and the way that that is going to change a lot of skilled labor jobs. So that's why I wanted to focus a lot on this topic to end out our year in 2025. It's one of the things that I think is most important for us. And we're going to continue doing this. So yeah, with that, and by the way, everyone who's presented here tonight, we're going to be inviting you to help us with this Illinois XR Center as things accelerate. And I'll talk to you more about that later, offline. But with that said, I told you this was coming towards the end of the show, and I'm going to throw up our donation link again. We hate asking for money, just like everybody else, but as a nonprofit, we need to prove the value of our program, so our goal is to keep this event free and accessible and to strengthen the XR community. So we ask people a lot of the times, do you find value? Consider what you gained from this event, whether you learned something new or made a new business connection, saw a cool demonstration, or were introduced into a new immersive technology. So you guys are aware of the work that happens behind this event. We commit to delivering this program in 3 formats every single time we do it. It is in person, it is a virtual environment, it's a live stream every time we do it. And for those of you who can't donate, we understand not a lot of people have money to donate. We would ask you to spread the word. We want to grow our audience because the more that we can accelerate awareness of this technology, the more we'll see people adopting it and seeing the value in it as well. We'd also be happy to have people who volunteer to help us in greeting, helping us to source speakers and presenters and solutions and demonstrations. I do want to mention that while we have a bunch of things that are upcoming, I also want to shoot a big shout out because this is our last event of the year. A huge thank you to the Next Evolution Advisory Board that meets every single week, which includes Paulo Igel, Ron Padzensky, Patrick O'Shaughnessy, Andrew Towell, and Caroline Dennis. Those are the folks that we meet with every single week who keep this thing going. And with that, we also wanted to let you know that as a standalone nonprofit, we are, the Next Evolution is a standalone nonprofit. It does get confused quite often with VR Chicago. VR Chicago is the company that produces the event, but the Next Evolution is actually its own standalone nonprofit event series. With that said, in January, we will be doing a social event. More details to follow on where it's going to take place at 2112. We know that for sure at this point. Oh, wow, I'm like chroma keyed in there. That's neat. Haven't seen that effect before. But with, so the January event, we'll let you guys know what the date is going to be. It will be on a Wednesday. We're not sure exactly which Wednesday in January. It will definitely not be the first Wednesday in January, but we're going to host it here in 2112. It's going to be social, food and drink. I've heard there's going to be some sponsorship towards food and drink. I'm looking for a nod. Yep, I see a nod at the back of the room, so that we do have sponsorship for that. So a little bit more than our normal snacks, and we'll be doing some games. We'll be doing some interactive fun stuff, possibly some giveaways. We'll see about that as well. We will be hosting the XR Summit this year in July. It's not going to be in June. It's going to take place in July. We're not sure the exact date, but again, I'll let you guys know about that as soon as we can. And with that said, we are still building the 2026 calendar of our topics. Expect to see in the newsletter that's going to come out we're going to try and send out the December newsletter early, so next week maybe, but there's going to be a link to a survey where we want our audience to actually be able to tell us what topics you want to see us present. So we have about 20 or 21 potential topics that we're looking at. Some of them would be repeats, some of them would be new topics, and much like we did this year, we're actually going to go with whatever our audience sort of rates the highest. But with that said, those are our social events. These are our social tags. Again, follow us, share our content. Please get the word out and let people know the value that they can get from this technology. And thanks again to all of our presenters, and Andrew and Tom for doing all of the heavy lifting over there on the tech control, and Scott in the back of the room running the microphones. We'll see you next month. Thanks, everybody. All right, so
Cool.
Did you mute us, Scott? Can you unmute? There we go. I need to be able to hear the room also. Or I need to be able to hear Frame. You're good. Andrew, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Excellent. So thanks, guys. Dee, I know I have to follow up with you. Dee, we have to schedule a meeting. I'll email you and we'll find time to do that.
Sounds great.
All right, thank you very much. Andrew, I'm going to meet you guys. Thanks again, Peter. Always great to talk to you.
Okay.
Matt, thank you.
I'm going to meet you guys in the room, and I will follow up with you all via email, and hopefully we'll schedule some time to talk.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Do it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Peter and Dee, I had a question actually